You are listening to the We Are West Ham podcast, Opposition View, with me, Will Pugh, speaking ahead of the Aston Villa away game. Villa away yet again, just weeks after we lost to them in the FA Cup. Absolutely robbed we were. I'm joined by a friend of mine and a colleague and a massive Villa fan. It's Alec Shilton, sports journalist at The Sun. Shilts, great to speak to you again. Only a few weeks ago, the We Are West Ham podcast listeners were treated to your dulcet tones ahead of the cup game. You are very similar in your Villa fandom as I am with West Ham, just sort of expecting the worst at all times. You predicted a home defeat on that occasion. What were your general thoughts around the cup game? Ones of surprise, I imagine.
I should have been right. I mean, if you looking at the first half of that game, you boys were comfortable. I thought Scholes looked really good.
Yeah,
Paqueta looked like he was playing, and quite honestly, I thought he could have been 2 or 3 goals up.
yeah.
But then I thought we only really played for 10 minutes in the second half.
Yeah, literally.
Superb bit of refereeing from Tim Robinson. We were very, very lucky with it. I mean, it felt like a night that was just made for you guys. He obviously seemingly had the side stand, the Doug Ellis, all of that, making all the noise, new manager, bounce. I just couldn't see us scoring. I was messaging guys at work saying, not a chance here. But yeah, got away with it. And that was our last home game. So we've had 3 away games since then. But it's funny how these things turn up, really.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it feels like I don't. You tell me, really. You obviously watch a lot more of Villa than I do. Do you tend to do that a lot? Because it felt like one of those games where, and this happens a lot, and it sort of annoys me sometimes how fans think it's almost like this. What I'm about to say matters more than the result. In that, it felt like we were better at football, but then you just had better players who turned up and turned the game. Does that happen to you? Are you typically like the better side, or because you're so dangerous going forward, you've got such talent in your forward ranks? I mean, Rodgers, sort of, amazing player. Ollie Watkins as well. Jhon Duran coming off the bench. We'll talk about Duran in a minute. Do you find that just because you're so sort of adept going forward that you often find yourself in situations where you're perhaps not playing the best, but you end up winning? Because that's certainly what West Ham did a lot under David Moyes. Is that typical, or is it just a random one?
I think we have got better at winning games where we've not been the better team. There was the Leicester home game, which I think was the game before it on January the 4th. They were terrible, but got it done. But I think one thing that's really kind of showing through with Villa in the last few months, well, last season as well, is they've been slow in the cup games, almost played deliberately slow. Like it's the game that they don't really need around the Premier League games. I know that sounds
it's like preserve the energy a bit almost.
Yeah, but in the Champions League, they've tried to keep the games nice and slow because they figure there'll be a goal in it. And in the cups, it's almost like an energy conservation thing. So I have noticed they've played more slowly in the cups. But honestly, I didn't see that turnaround coming at all. It was kind of classic Emery football, the second one, the way that they're very good at playing through teams with straight passes. We've been doing it for 2 years. You keep thinking someone's going to stop us scoring by just passing it in a straight line to the striker. Yeah. They have the box midfield. They work it very well. Lots of energy and good passes. So the winner was a classic Emery goal. But again, it was lucky. It was a very
to be fair. I mean, the corner was obviously ridiculous. To be fair, I did sort of think about 5 minutes before that we got given a goal kick, which was a cast iron corner. So it was kind of like as soon as it flipped around, you're like, oh well, this is going in then. But yeah, with that pass straight down the middle. I felt like that was I know Lopetegui wasn't in charge for that game, but maybe a bit of a hangover from that horrible era. That seemed like the first training session he did with West Ham was go, right, what we're going to do is let teams all they have to do is run or pass in a straight line directly through the middle of the pitch and then they can score. Like we just seem to do that all the time. But I suppose there was a bit of skill in it as well. You mentioned Jhon Duran there, mate. Bit of an odd situation, this. I mean, he's doing crossed hammers in the summer, and then West Ham wouldn't go any higher than Villa's 40 million valuation in the summer. Then there's all the stories. I read sort of the chronological time order. I read from maybe some more spurious sources that PSG and Barcelona were having a look at him this month, and that Villa wanted 60 mil.
Yeah.
Then after that, West Ham bid 57, and the story exclusive in our paper says that Villa were fuming with the timing. You sent me one of the funniest texts you've ever sent me, saying sort of, why on earth were Villa angry with the timing? Did they expect you to wait until February when the transfer window shut? But what do you just make generally of the whole Duran situation, stretching back to last summer and up till now, really?
I think going back to the summer, he wanted that move. That was pretty obvious from the sign. I think there was no real sign at that point of what was to come.
Absolutely, yeah.
But he scored all sorts of goals. He scored goals from distance, instinctive goals. He's been good. He's got a hammer of a left foot. He's good in the air, and he clearly sees things that other players don't see with the goals from distance. I don't think anybody saw that coming. After the West Ham move failed to materialise, he knuckled down. I've heard he'd sort of moved into a quieter area away from some of the distractions that he'd had. Villa gave him the number 9 shirt, which was a surprise to me because I wasn't even sure he'd get a squad number when he came back for pre-season. And yeah, the word has it that he just knuckled down. He's been excellent since then. But I think if he was to my mind, he's worth double the 40 million that was.
Seriously,
absolutely.
Yeah. Absolutely. So you would, because the sort of line was that Villa were sort of a bit fuming with the derisory offer. It felt to me, I was like, I mean, all right, it might be what you want to pay, but blimey.
Yeah, that's fair enough. I think the 57 million, the headline number on it sounds reasonable as a kind of a way to approach. I think it was West Ham's second bid of the window, or at least second approach. But
apparently the first one was 40, and then we went back with 57.
Yeah, that word derisory, it's a great sort of football cliche, the derisory offer.
Yeah, totally.
But that's what Villa were briefing. They were unhappy with the structure of the bid. There was some dispute over the figure, but it was more the structure of the bid.
Classic West Ham, like, look, we'll give you £1 million this week, then we'll have 56 over the next 25 years.
When Villa have won the Premier League and the Champions League, you have 50 of it. I think look, that's obviously a bit extreme, but I think there was a bit of that, that they were unhappy with that. But what was fairly ludicrous, I thought, even as a fan, was they were unhappy with the timing, with it being it coming out the day before the Monaco game, and that's what I meant. Like, you can't. They're not going to leave that until the last day of the window if you're going to try and do it. And it's interesting for me because obviously the Tim Steidman news today about it looks like he's gone, and that was kind of signposted by the new man coming in to work with Potter. But I don't know.
The Chelsea.
Would that have been Steidman's kind of final act almost, this sort of Hail Mary at Duran? Or
that's difficult to say, really. If I'm honest, it feels like that's, and I don't look, we're always really objective on this podcast about such things to do with the board, right? That would feel like smells like it's got Sullivan's fingerprints all over it. Particularly if I'd not really heard that about it. It was the structure of the deal they were annoyed with. I'd sort of read some of the stuff as that it was just the amount, which actually the way you explain it makes more sense why they might be annoyed. But yeah, David Sullivan has got history. You know, I'm sure if he sort of listens to this and took umbrage, I think if he really looked deep down, he would kind of go, all right, yeah, he might have a point. Is that he has got a bit of history of sort of throwing in like virtually impossible to accept bids for big players, just so, you know, West Ham get linked with big players. So it sort of gives off the impression to fans that we're trying. It's a bit weird in recent times because we've recruited really well. It's been a bit haphazard since Steidman's come in, and to be quite frank, I'll be quite pleased to see the back of him. But yeah, that stinks of Sullivan, that sort of, particularly if it's structured a bit off, and that it just so it's like, look, we are trying, but you know, that feels like one of those things. If you're willing to give a bit more up front, and maybe that was the problem. Do you? So you said it's worth double to 40. I heard the other day, right? So it was one of the sort of what I call them the XG trolls, like those. I'm not sure. I don't think you're one of these, but like the sort of soulless folk who don't want to see tackles and celebrations in football anymore. It's all about the chances they could have scored. And the sort of statement was, if Villa can get 60 million for Duran now, snap it up, because but effectively that some of the stuff he's done, the amazing stuff from long distance and the acrobatic goals, have just been like lots of like 1 in 1,000 ones, and actually it's not sustainable. So over the next 5 years, you won't see that. Does that ring true at all, or?
Perhaps, yeah, perhaps. But the thing I would say as a counter argument is that Haaland, of all the Premier League strikers ever, well, all the Premier League players ever, no one is getting them at a better rate, sort of minutes per goal, than Duran. I think it's in the high 90s. So that naturally you'd expect that to drop off, particularly playing for a team like Villa as opposed to Man City, but
especially a team like West Ham.
Well, yeah, exactly. Look, the reason I think he's worth that is because I think, having seen what he's capable of, and given the market for strikers, when you look at how Arsenal are struggling, I think Chelsea would be quite a natural place for him to potentially end up. Although today, the story is that Al Nassr, where Ronaldo plays, are seriously looking at it, and I think Villa have said privately, we've heard that 100 million might do it. I mean, that's a lot of money. I think we've seen a lot of sort of 100 million euros, more likely about 85. But if Al Nassr come and put 85 million quid on the table, I don't see how Villa turn it down. Sort of in the last half hour or so, we're hearing that they're sniffing around Matheus Cunha, as a lot of clubs are. Be absolutely astonished if Villa sign Cunha. But that tells me that they might be thinking about this if we're being linked with Cunha, because from a PSR point of view, there's no way they afford that without selling Duran.
Yeah, I see what you mean. Just quickly, and before we move on from Duran, do you, I suppose, do you, just sort of briefly, do you see the West Ham move happening at all, or do you think now there's just too many bigger teams you could go to this month or in the summer?
I struggle to see it now, because mainly because of the money. But he was clearly keen on it. If he developed a place in his heart for West Ham and he feels like it's the place he's supposed to be, maybe. But I think there'd have to be. I think there first of all have to be a massive uplift for West Ham between now and the end of the season. Not sure where you guys are financially with it, because I think he would cost big money. But he's made it really clear with his actions that he wants to be number one striker. He wants to play. So if that's something that West Ham, I assume, would be able to offer him that, then he might go for that.
Yeah, he'd be immediate big dog. He'd be straight in there. Fulkrug's been really unlucky with injuries. He absolutely, what's names all over Mikel Antonio and Danny Ings. I don't get me started. So yeah, he gets in immediately. Just one thing briefly then. Do you think it's the law, is that you mentioned about wanting to be number one, is sort of the law of another season of Champions League, or the second half of the season of Champions League football, where he is doing well in? Do you think that's enough to keep him, or is it a sort where he's like, no, I'd rather go and play every week than be a, albeit really important, but squad member in the Champions League?
I honestly think it's the latter. I think he would rather play. I think now there are these stories about how in Colombia he would grow up, him and his mates would go out and play with the Champions League music blaring in the background. So he's got a bit of an obsession about it. But I also think now he's done it, he scored against Bayern, I think he knows his time will come again. I think he wants a spell where he plays regularly. And looking at it through the prism of a West Ham support, could that be at West Ham? Potentially it could. I just think his next move is more likely to be one of, it's likely to be either Paris Saint-Germain, Chelsea, or a Saudi club. I could see Al Nassr, if they put the money on the table, appealing, because he gets the chance to go and play with Cristiano Ronaldo. And that Saudi move is to an Englishman, a Spaniard, an Italian, a German. I think it's the end of your international career going and doing that. But I'm not sure it is to a Colombian. I still think you can play up front for Colombia and go and play in Saudi Arabia. If you're the best Colombian striker, you're more than likely to play. It might reduce your chances a little bit if there's another guy at the top of his game, but I don't think that affects him in terms of looking at what his motivations would be.
Yeah, I totally get that. I mean, I seem to remember Radamel Falcao playing up front for Colombia. I'm sure he had some proper rogue clubs in amongst yours at one point. Right, just give us a brief summary then, Shilts, before we move on to the game. Just really briefly, like Villa are going 8th in the league at the moment. Obviously in the Champions League as well, you've had some great nights in there, beating us in the Cup. You've got Tottenham at home or away in the next round of the FA Cup? Home. In the FA Cup, it felt like there was a little bit of sort of rhetoric around Villa, perhaps that like about it being a bit of a struggle this season. But I sort of feel like 8th and competing in Europe and the Cups. Like, has there been a little bit of a pickup? What's the general feeling around Villa fans about this season?
It's a great question because it's just dividing everyone. I think very quickly fans get used to winning. They think they should be 4th or 5th, particularly when you see City dropping off. It's like, well, Forest and Bournemouth have come out of the pack. Why is that not us doing it again? The reality, as far as I've seen it, and you guys would know as well as anyone, is that when you're playing in Europe regularly and perhaps your squad's not, we've raised the floor of it this year with signings like Ross Barkley, but I wouldn't 100%. Say necessarily we've bought in. Arguably, our first team's weaker without Douglas Luiz and potentially Diaby. Now, it's not been a physical thing, which is when I talk about us slowing down the play a little bit in the cup games. I think that has a lot to do with it. But mentally, it must be exhausting for them. Like going back to the West Ham game, that was a big night for the club, 150th anniversary. They were poor. They had to raise their game. They ended up, they put a lot into the second half to get that done. Then it was Everton away 3 days later. Massive physical test at Goodison. They got it done. 2-0 down at Arsenal. Pulled something out of the hat, which I was delighted about. For many reasons. Yeah, a lot of Arsenal fans in the office. And then you go to Monaco and we were completely flat. We were rubbish. I mean, I think there were other reasons for that. It's terrible to moan about the pitch, but it was soaking. We couldn't pass through it, and just having conceded a goal from the set play never really got going. But I looked at the team and thought, emotionally, they just don't look like they can raise themselves again. I mean, I don't know, sort of not having followed West Ham as closely as I might have done during your European trips, like were you guys struggling to pick it up at the weekend or in these sort of runs? I know there were, because you got to the latter stages, you were playing it sort of after Christmas, right? But
yeah, quite. I mean, it just sort of felt, I mean, when we won the Conference League, we came 14th, because I think from about probably, I can't really remember, say March, maybe a smidge later than that. I think Moisey knew, well, I got a pick here, and like, we either go for the league or we go for it in Europe. And I think he made the right choice, because we got in the Europa League the next season, got to the quarterfinals again, beaten by Bayer Leverkusen, obviously the best team in Europe that year, and gave him a real test over 2 legs. So, yeah, I mean, it was the only one we really sort of did well was that first season when we were in the Europa League, got to the semis and lost to Eintracht Frankfurt, and also that year qualified for, albeit the Conference League, but qualified for Europe through the league. That was the only season we really thrived on both fronts. And then, of course, the Conference League win season was in the middle, like I mentioned, and we come 14th, and it was only the winning the Conference League that saved Moisey's job for another year. And then once again, really, we had the best points tally we had after 19 games of the season, and got through to the Europa League knockout stages. And everyone was still sort of moaning, because like we had sort of got through a fair few games like by the skin of our teeth and just playing a bit gritty football. But I was all for it. I was like, whatever, West Ham are winning, sign me up. And like you said, we were just winning a lot of games. We weren't necessarily the better team, which historically we've never done. And then again, it sort of got to the same thing where our Premier League form took a real nosedive, which was all sort of around the time, as we now know, that Sullivan had offered Moyes a contract and then whipped it away from him after 3 or 4 dodgy results. The fans wanted him gone, and it was all a bit weird. So then I think again he was just like, well, like exactly what you said. It was always our squad was only ever big enough to compete properly on one of the fronts, as in like, you know, to a decent level. And that's what happened. So he just went, well, we'll go for the Europa League because that was brilliant last time. I think he knew he was going to go. I'll go out with a flourish. And again, unlucky to draw Leverkusen in the quarterfinals. The other big draw was Liverpool. Any of the other I fancy us to get through. So yeah, I totally get it about the squad. Listen, mate, I've kept you for quite a while already. Just talk to me about the game then on Sunday. How do you see it going? You sort of see it being similar to the cup game, or have you got any team news or anything like that? What are your feelings?
Well, McGinn's back, Anana's out, so the team, wouldn't say it picks itself, but I'd imagine it will be Tielemans with Kamara in the middle, Ramsey, Rodgers, Watkins, and one other. Marlon could start, could be Bailey, but Bailey's not been up to scratch. So I think they could start with Bailey and bring on Marlon, but I think it's time Bailey probably sat out for a bit. I think
that's Daniel Marlon, yeah?
Yeah, new signing from Dortmund, who it sounds like another kind of inconsistent winger, but but that's
what there's loads of them available on the planet Earth at the moment.
They generally are wingers, but that's kind of the market that we're shopping in. It's 25 million quid players because that's what we're restricted to. But I think in terms of my views for this weekend, it's maybe more shaped by West Ham's team at the moment. I'm a little bit more optimistic. Never fully optimistic, but a little bit more optimistic.
That's your style, though, is it? That's nothing to do with West Ham.
I know. So is Bowen going to play? Do you think?
Don't know. Not sure. Really uncertain. It feels like, if I'm honest, it feels like if it's touch and go, don't force him back. It feels like I mean, the last couple of games where we haven't played with him, we sort of, we were okay against Fulham. Like, we could have easily lost that 4-1, although we won it 3-2. They scored basically 2 of our goals for us and hit the bar twice, in addition to their 2 goals, obviously. So, and then Palace, we were quite rubbish. But it's the defence is more of a problem. Like, Paqueta and Kudus sort of do a job up front, like they stretch defences and work hard for the team. It's not the end of the world. But as soon as like Danny Ings comes on, it's just like game over. Genuinely it is. But it's more at the back. Mavropanos is suspended. He got sent off against Palace. With also Tadibo still injured. So it's and our defence has been shaky at best. So it's Kilman and one other at centre back. I'm not really certain who that's going to be yet.
Did you play back 3-5? Did you change the system for Palace? I looked at it online, and I think Cresswell played with. Yeah,
it was one of those, like when modern day managers want to be this like flexible in-game flex. Is like
he loves that.
Exactly, right? So it was kind of like we all thought, it'll be 5 at the back because Cresswell can play that like Carl Walker for England centre-back role on the edge. He's done that before. We thought it'd be that, but it was sort of half that, half like 4-2-3-1 with Emerson as the winger. But again, one of them things where it's like when we've got the ball, Emerson tried to come back and make it a 5. When we didn't, Cresswell turned into a left-back and but yeah, so Cresswell's fine. We are just a bit threadbare at the moment. So you know what it's like, and I think Tottenham are going through a similar thing, aren't they, at the moment?
Of interest, what do you think about what you guys should do in the loan market with strikers? I was talking to a colleague about this earlier, right? So I've seen you link with loan moves for Brian Brobby, who I saw live twice last season.
Where's he at?
Ajax.
Oh.
And I watched him twice in the flesh last season and thought very little of him. And the other one, I can't remember, is this Portuguese striker? Is he playing for Leipzig, possibly?
Right.
Is it worth you guys even bringing in a player on loan? I know you've only got Danny Ings available, but Jarrod Bowen can play there. If I just see it as a waste of money. Like, why would you bring someone in who's not good enough long term? It's not like one of these players that you you take on loan with an option to buy, it just seems like a bit of a waste of money. I mean, you've got Danny Ings earning 125 grand a week, whether he's worth that or not.
Well,
the question
he isn't.
No, he isn't, is he? Which was part of the reason we were delighted to get rid of him. But the point is, he's your player. He's your player. So I don't understand with Bowen coming back why they do that.
It's a fairly good question. I mean, Antoni's out for the season, potentially forever. Fulkrug obviously got injured at Villa in the cup, and it's just feels so bad for him because he's been well unlucky. And when he has, he's actually put the ball in net a few times, but they've all been in defeats, so they're not really getting noticed. Like we've lost 3-1 or 3-2 or 4-1 or 4-2 a few times, and he's bagged when he's been. And as soon as he looks like he's getting a bit of match sharpness, getting involved, he gets injured. And I still think he'll be a good player if he can stay fit. Bowen can play there, and it's a weird one with Bowen because he's simultaneously our best striker and our best right winger.
Yeah,
but he is more effective as a right winger. It's a bit like Mo Salah. If you put him up front, he'd probably still be Liverpool's best centre forward, but he's at most valuable at right wing. So I don't know really. I think we should get rid of Ings, but we can't because
I guess what I should have added. I mean, the obvious answer to my question is because we haven't got any strikers. But my point is, I don't see West Ham as a good friend of mine who's a West Ham fan disagrees with what I'm about to say. He still thinks Europe's an outside bet. But on the one hand, I don't see you guys getting into Europe. The other side, I don't see you going down. So I guess my point is, if it's just about building, then why take a player that's not a long-term option?
No, and you're spot on. And if I'm honest, I think the board have written the season off anyway. I think Lopetegui just nosed everything up so terribly at the beginning of the season. We're out of both cups. We got through one round of the League Cup, beat Bournemouth, and then got thumped by Liverpool, I think that was, and then obviously lost to you in the FA Cup. I don't know about Europe being still on. The middle of the league is weirdly tight, isn't it? I would say Europe is definitely much of a feat now. We're 10 points behind you. You're 8th, and we're in 14th. I mean, top half's on, but these days, again, what for 5 or 6 million in like prize money, that's just what you spend on a lone player, isn't it? So I think if I was the board running it really financially prudently, as grim as it might be for fans, and as much as fans won't want to hear it, I think I'd just go, well, we've got Ings, Fulkrug might be back. We can play Kudus and Bowen and Paqueta to do a job. We're not going down. We're not getting Europe. Like, sorry, lads, but I know it's shite and we've charged you all for a season ticket, but we're just limping through to the end of the season and we'll go again. So, yeah, it's a bit bleak, really, but I sort of think as a financially prudent owner, that's probably what you do, unless there's something, you don't have to pay a big loan fee, and if you just pay some wages for the end of the season, then perhaps it's worth it. But
most football fans are just addicted to signings, though, aren't they? It's almost like you've got to do something in January. It doesn't matter what it is, you've got to do something.
The West Ham have been good. I think we signed Bowen in January. I think we signed Souček in January. And there was one other good one who I can't remember off the top of my head. Balbuena. I know he had a brilliant season. We signed him for 3 million in Jan. He was great for 18 months. So, yeah, we were sort of all right at January moves, but, I'm not really sure. Right, what we're saying then, Schultz, Sunday afternoon, Villa Park, Villa v West Ham in the Prem. 8th takes on 14th in the Claret and Blue Derby. Are you winning? Feels like
it. I think so. Yeah, I think so. We can't keep clean sheets. So I'm going to go 2 or 3-1. But yeah, I do fancy us. That's mainly because of your injuries. I think it's going to take a bit of a leap of faith, particularly if Bowen's not fit enough to start to see you guys scoring twice. And equally at the back, if Max Kilman's your only fit centre back, then I fancy Watkins for a couple, to be honest.
Yeah, I think our best hope, and I wouldn't hate this, and again, fans will hate it because it's sort of, well, they won't hate it because it's Potter doing it, not Moyes, so it'll be okay. But I think our best hope, if people listening to this podcast, so bored of me saying this, so I'm not going to say David Moyes. If we had a David Moyes type manager in charge, someone prudent in this game will go, look, I've got no players here. I'm just going to sit back and hope we can scrap a point. The game will be well ugly. And that's what a sort of pragmatic, flexible manager will do. I think Potter's shown a little bit of that. And I think he's also cottoned on that Lopetegui tried to change too much too quickly, whether he's desired system or not was any good. I think no is sort of up for discussion. But whatever you say, it's unanimously accepted that he tried to do it too quickly and was too stubborn, and sort of forgot that actually it wouldn't be bad to pick up some results along the way. I think Potter's a bit smarter than that. I think we've seen his first couple of games, he's pragmatic enough. I think he said after the Fulham game, when he took Kudus off when we were 2-1 up at 63 minutes, and he was asked why. And he said, because I had the feeling that nice football wasn't going to win that game. Which is, and I love hearing that because I want West Ham to win games, not with Allardyce.
Refreshing.
Yeah. So if I was Potter, I wouldn't be surprised to just see him go, right, lads, we're not trying anything this week. We're here for points this season. So when we've got a few more players back and perhaps a summer and a pre-season or a bit of a free week in the second half of the season, we'll do some tactical work. This week, remember what you did under Moisey, right? 5 at the back, 2 in front, camped in front, trying it on a few counter-attacks. That's what I'd do. And I think he might be sensible enough to do that. And that's our only chance of getting anything, maybe a point with that, I think.
You know what? Leicester sat in against us, and we had no clue. Rodgers was suspended for that game, so he's the player, along with Tielemans' as passing, that would kind of unpick the team sat in, I think. But we were absolutely miserable, and we were pretty fortunate to win that game. It opened up with Barkley smashing one in from the edge of the box, and in the end, it turned into a bit of a basketball game at the end. But that could work. That could work. Sit in, but I mean, it takes a new manager to swallow a bit of pride, right? And
yeah, I feel like, I don't know. I think he's got broad enough shoulders to do that. I think, and I think people just, like I say, because it was people just think Graham Potter's this really expensive manager. So I think even if we like the PR around it at the moment will be, he's really pragmatic and flexible. Like he's got his style, but it's great to see that he can like dig in when it needs it. But like, when it was David Moyes doing that, it was like, oh my God, it's disgusting, dinosaur.
Emery's first away game was at Brighton, and you won't believe this, but we won 2-1, I think, with a Danny Ings double. So this was a long time.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah, I know. But we really sat in, and he did it for a few games. But what he was trying to do early on was say, look, this team have been shipping goals. I'm going to make them solid. So we played more or less a flat back 5 at times. I mean, it wasn't even a 3-5-2. It was a flat back 5. I think Ashley Young and Matt Cash were the fullbacks, and then there'd be 3 centre backs in there. And he just tried to shore it up. And then from there, you get a bit of confidence, you start building. And again, I think at that point, Villa were a little bit short of wingers and forwards. And I guess that's why Danny Ings was playing. But it was. My point is, it was a way to, build some foundations. And I don't think for any manager it's the worst way of going about it. But you see a lot of them come in now, and they have this way of playing, and it will be on the front foot, and it's almost a bit Coltsish. This is the way it's got to be, and we'll do it. And actually, I think you're right, Potter. As you'll know, he switches a lot in game, but I don't think from game to game he'll be afraid of mixing it up as well. If he thinks he needs to sit in and break, because he's got the pace of Kudus and Bowen and Somerville and whoever else, I don't see that being a problem at all.
No, quite. I'm not sure if Somerville's available for this one, but yeah, you're spot on. And I've sort of said it a lot, really. I'm a little bit. I know it's only quite a new phenomenon, but I'm fed up of what I call, and I think Lopetegui had a serious case of what I call companyism, or now Russell Martinism, where it's just like, this is my style, and I don't care if we're shipping goals or we're losing or my team's going to get relegated. This is my style. And it's almost managers put their own style above the needs of the football team to get points. And it's like, Vincent, but we're losing loads of games. Looks like we might go down. Yep, this is my style. All right, fine. We'll give it a few weeks. Vincent, we're still not winning, mate. It looks like we're definitely going to go down. The club's going to lose loads of money. Yep, this is my style. Vincent, we've gone down, mate. Don't worry about it. Not my problem. I've got the Bayern Munich job. And it's like, just using clubs as like CV builders, or just like windows for, look at the style I play, look how effective I'd be at a bigger club than this. So yeah, I want Potter to actually put some points on board. Listen, Shields, kept you for much longer than I said I was going to. You've been absolutely brilliant. I've really enjoyed this conversation. Aston Villa away Sunday afternoon, Villa Park. I suppose being Aston Villa away, it would be at Villa Park, would it not? It's 4:30 on Sunday. Is it a TV one, Shields, or
it is a TV one, but I was going to say it's evidently not Super enough to hold up Super Sunday because United Fulham's in the evening, but that's not on Sky. So Sky did think it was a Super Sunday.
Yeah,
it's 4:30 and it's live. Yeah.
Cool. Well, I'm hoping for a totally forgettable Super Sunday that West Ham just dig in. But that's been Alec Shilton there, sports journalist at The Sun, massive Aston Villa fan, friend of mine, and a very good colleague indeed. Thank you very much for listening, everyone. Sorry this was a smidge later in the week, bit of a mad one, but squeezed it in on the Friday night, so plenty of time ahead of the game Sunday afternoon to listen. On patreon.com/We Are West Ham podcast or on your normal platforms. Follow us on all the socials. You know where to go for those. Just search We Are West Ham podcast on Twitter, Insta, and subscribe to the YouTube channel. But if you want the podcast 24 hours early and with ad-free listening, then sign up at patreon.com/We Are West Ham podcast for the price is less than a cup of coffee for at least 8 podcasts a month, 2 a week, and you get them a day earlier than your non-paying counterparts. What a deal that is. Thanks very much for listening, everyone. Thanks to Schultz for joining us. Up the Hammers, Villa away on Sunday. Let's go and have it. West Ham Massive will speak to you next week.